All right, we're going to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission local planning agency for October 12th, 2021. We'll do invocation and then the pledge. Everybody stand, please. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, Lord God. Please watch over us as we do the work of the city tonight, Lord God. Please watch out for our first responders and our all of our medical people, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Consent agenda, minutes of the planning and zoning meeting.
I'll take the, excuse me, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Lomnick,
Here.
Vice Chair Millen,
Here.
Member Kennedy,
Here.
Member Williams is absent, Member Forges,
Here.
Member Keller.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Sorry, I get a little crazy sometimes. All right, so now we'll go to the consent agenda. I need a motion on the the minutes of the planning and zoning meeting on September 14th.
I'll make the motion to
Got
approve the
a
minutes.
motion by Vice Chair Mellon. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Keller. He's not alternate tonight. He's on the board. I like it. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Old business, none. New business, we have the Catalado Variance 1910 Sherryland Terrace. We have zoning manager Whitfield.
Okay, good evening, commissioners. So the first item before you is the Catalado Variance BR-2104 on 1910 Sherryland Terrace, and the request for variances for the rear yard setback. Again, the issue before the Planning and Zoning Commission is whether or not to recommend approval of a variance to reduce the minimum rear building setback from 25 feet to 10 feet for the property located at 1910 Sherryland Terrace for the conversion of an existing shed into an accessory dwelling. The property is between Nicole Boulevard and Marlene Drive, and it's approximately 0.17 acres. The site is currently developed, and I drew a little arrow to show you where the shed location is at. It's in the back of the property. This is the surrounding future land use. It's all low density residential. This is the surrounding zoning, all R1 zoning districts around it. The Land Development Code requires in section 5-6B that accessory structures which are used for housing people, such as guest houses and garage apartments, that they are not allowed within the required yard. So in this instance, it would be the required rear yard of 25 feet. So R1 requires 25 feet rear setback. They are asking for 10 feet. The shed is currently 10.5 feet from the rear property line. So this is a reduction of 15 feet. Based on our research, the shed was built and permitted in 1999 as a workshop. It is approximately 11.5 feet from the actual house itself. The code requires a 5-foot minimum separation between structures on any lot. So a house, an accessory would have to be 5 feet apart. 2 accessories would have to be 5 feet apart, things like that. So that would make it not functional or efficient for them to expand the house by about 6 feet in order to maintain that 5-foot separation. Because of that, the applicants are seeking to repurpose the existing shed instead of removing it and expanding the dwelling. Staff finds that the variance request satisfies the 4 criteria that's listed in section 4-9A, and the granting of this variance will not confer any special privileges to this lot that is not otherwise allowed in any other lot. This is a small rendering. If you can see my mouse, this portion, this is the front elevation. It faces the back of the current house. This is the rear elevation facing west, facing the back the rear property line. That is the right side or the north elevation facing Nicole. This is the left side, south elevation facing south. So it's basically a one-bedroom, small little efficiency, 2 stories, a total of 472 square feet. The max accessory structure size for an accessory dwelling is 600 square feet. So based on our evaluation, staff is recommending approval of the variance to reduce the setback from 25 feet to 10 feet for the property located at 1910 Sherryland Terrace for the conversion of the existing shed into an accessory dwelling.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for staff?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the applicant is here.
Great. Anybody have any questions for staff? Does the applicant want to come up?
If there's any questions, I'm willing to answer, but.
Great. At this time, I'm going to open this up to the public hearing. Is there anybody here else that would like to speak on this matter? Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. Does anybody else have any other questions on this?
Yeah, I got one. The back lot, it seems to be vacant. Is that ever going to be for future expansion?
The back lot,
It looked like the back of the property was like a big field. Is there?
it's a pond, I believe.
Oh, okay. It's like a wetland. Okay.
Come on up if you're going to.
I can kind of, we've had a recent application, so what you're looking at is this is a pond for the subdivision that the city, I think, sort of maintains, and then, so there's not an ability to expand into the pond. And then this parcel, the parcel north of it, adjacent to Nicole, we actually had the Nicole subdivision. It was about 16 lots come through. It's been tough to get it developed. It's got a I say like a spring run through the property from this ditch, and it's just been costly to engineer it and develop it. But there wouldn't be any way to encroach into the rear, obtain any other land, because it's for stormwater under a stormwater permit.
Okay. Yeah, which would lead me to my next question would be utilities, electricals, or anything there now or will be in the future?
Does the existing shed have, so on the lot, they can run utilities to this accessory structure. I think it was permitted as a workshop, so it probably has either an overhead line to it. And
Right,
so
but
it
no
have-
future, we're not, the city doesn't see a future need to go back there and put piping or electrical that may interfere with the easement.
Well, in some of our older subdivisions, we used to have utility easements in the rear, but we've taken them all out and moved them to the front.
Okay.
So we would not go to the rear yard with that
Okay.
or anything.
Thank you.
Cool.
And to be clear, this is a request to reduce the setback, but not necessarily for the shed, meaning any time after, they can put in structure there with the minimum setback.
If I'm understanding your question, the reduction is just for the conversion of the shed to an accessory structure.
Suppose the shed gets destroyed, can they then reconstruct something within that setback?
I would say not, simply because then they would have the ability to place it where it should be.
So in essence, the variance request is just for the shed, just for the
For the
shed.
conversion.
So if the shed gets destroyed, say by a hurricane, they cannot rebuild something within those 10-foot setback.
I'm not sure how Ocoee would do it, but it's, I mean, if the shed's gone, they can probably place it where they can.
Yeah, and the same footprint as we do with structure. So if
Okay.
something, some act of nature happens or something, in that same footprint you can. If you expand upon it, there'd be a nonconformity, would have to come back through the variance process.
Correct.
And
So
that's
they-
why as part of the public hearing, we get the elevation. So if, when it comes to building permit, if they submit a 25 by 40 building and what was approved under the variance was smaller, you got to go back through the process. And if they change out, they'd have to come back through the process. So they could rebuild in the same footprint.
Correct,
Yes.
same footprint
Yes,
within those 10.
yes. Yeah, so it doesn't, so what you're asking is, does that create a full all the way across the rear yard? Now, can they
Correct.
put building and building and building and building? What will stop that is we have requirements under the straight zoning that they have to maintain 50% maximum impervious. So with the house footprint, the driveway, the sidewalk, any accessory structures, they will exceed 50% impervious on the lot. So that would be another stop, is once they achieve 50% impervious. Another, and then I think that would be the only other option. So they might be able to fit another shed, but not a living structure, not an apartment or something like that. And a shed doesn't have to meet the 25 foot, it just has a 3 or 5 foot depending on the size of the shed.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. Mike? What is the core reason for the difference in the setback between the shed and the dwelling? And was the setback for the dwelling in 1999 10.5 feet, or was it still 25 feet?
No, the setback for an accessory structure, unless it's a shed under 80 square feet, is reduced then from the main setback, because it envisions you moving out your main, extending the rear of your house.
Right.
And with that would be of a size that would be a large, like the width of the house. When we reviewed this variance, we looked at a couple things. First, the building was approved, and it's not your typical shed, and it has a look to it and a size to it. Also, to the rear is not a habitable dwelling lot. It's a wooded lot. It's a stormwater pond. And so we looked at first the type of building that was there, what's going to remain there, what's coming, what is that sort of active use adjacent to the rear lot? Because that's why you want to protect the rear setback, because you don't want your neighbor behind you having their house and their TV with the window open right there, 10 foot off your property line. And so with this, we looked at, let's look at the existing building, let's look what's coming in, it's not changing, let's look at the rear. Is it injurious to, is it going to harm the property behind them? There's no one behind them. They're coming in with solid plans to pull a building permit. Sort of that operating as a wood shop is allowed for an accessory structure, and that's sometimes we've had in the past. Someone builds an accessory building in the back, and they sharpen their lawnmower blades, and they run a grinder. That's allowed in an accessory building. In this case, they're going to tighten up that building under the building code to make it habitable. So it's going to kind of make it quieter, except perhaps if there's a condensing unit, where that condensing unit is located. But we look, because there's no one behind them, they're providing value, they're not exceeding the minimum size of an accessory apartment dwelling, we saw that it was approvable.
Can I ask one follow-up?
Mhm.
I noted the hardship economics component of the recommendation. If this shed didn't exist and this was just an application for the variance for new construction of this dwelling, would you have the same recommendation without the hardship?
It would be we'd have to see the house plan that was, for instance, one time we had up off of one of the log roads up in Sawmill area, there was an addition done, and the way the house was built, it was a handicap addition, and a portion of it extended into that. And we were looking at, and we evaluated and supported it. But if you were just building a regular cookie cutter house and it wanted to be 10 feet, no, not at all. This is not taking that solid 40 foot wide, 50, 60 foot wide of the house and putting that all the way up to the rear. And it's meeting the side setback, so. We kind of, also, in variances, we try to give you an opportunity, if there is a majority vote for the variance, to tie it to something. So you're not just carte blanche changing the zoning out there. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Joe, you good?
I'm good.
Do I need to read this? Do I need to summarize these? Okay, just checking. All right, so as summarized in the staff report, the P&Z must find the following requirements are met in order to recommend approval of variance. These are: 1, that special conditions and circumstances exist which are particular to the land structures or required subdivision improvements involved and which are not applicable to other land structures or required subdivision improvements. 2, that the literal interpretation of the provisions of these regulations would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties with similar conditions. 3, that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. 4, that the granting of the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by these regulations to other land structures or required subdivision improvements under similar conditions. In order to recommend the approval of the variance request, the Planning and Zoning Commission must find that the reasons set forth in the application justify granting the variance, and that granting the variance will be in harmony with the surrounding territory and not injurious of the public welfare. We will now need a motion to either find that the requirements are met and to recommend approval of the variance, or a motion finding that the requirements are not met and recommend denial of the variance. Can I have a motion to recommend approval of the variance of the property under project number VR 2104?
I'll make that motion to recommend approval, also basing that recommendation off of the city's recommendation to allow it to go through.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Mellon. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Member Keller. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Good to go. Congratulations. All right, next up, we have the Araya office. This is a small-scale comprehensive plan future land use map amendment CPA 2021-003. Zoning Manager Whitfield.
Thank you. So if this one looks familiar to you, it's because we brought it to you in September. We are bringing it back to you because we found out after the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing last month that when we did the property appraisers 300-foot boundary for notices, the parcel ID number landed on a property that's on the East Lauderdale side of Orange County, so those folks were noticed of that hearing. So we advertised again. Again, this is a small-scale comprehensive plan, future land use map amendment, and a corresponding rezoning. This presentation will be essentially identical to what you saw in September. The property is on 868 Robertson Road, approximately 627 feet east of Tolman Boulevard, Windermere Road, and the Robertson Road roundabout. It's approximately 2 acres. It's a small portion of the parent tract, which is about 10.5 acres. It's currently not being parceled out. It will still be part of the parent parcel, and the proposed use is medical office. The site is currently vacant, but it is undergoing some site improvements based on the previously approved Araya independent living facility and the Legacy assisted living facility and memory care facility to the north. The surrounding land use categories are low density residential and commercial, and recreation to the south, which is the county's park, and the surrounding zoning is R1A. As I mentioned, this portion is just under 2 acres. It's this yellow highlighted portion. The remainder of this property is the independent living facility, the Araya Independent Living Facility. This portion here is wetlands, and it's been dedicated to the city. This is a separate site, the Legacy Lifestyles, but all of this is in this area. Across the street is the George Bailey Park in Orange County, and that access will remain. Utilities and emergency services will be provided by the city of Ocoee. This proposed use of the site for medical office provides a unique opportunity for seniors living in the independent living facility to age in place since they have access to medical services. This is the current aerial with the site work beginning. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the small-scale comp plan amendment to change the future land use designation from low-density residential to professional offices, and the corresponding rezoning from R1AA to professional office zoning on the 1.94 acre portion of the property located at 868 Roberson Road, assigned parcel ID number 31222800000005.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Is the applicant here?
We're here, you have questions for us.
Cool. I'm gonna open it to the public. No public comments. We'll close the public comment. So we are gonna need, one motion to recommend the approval of the small-scale comprehensive plan future land use map amendment, CPA 2021-003. Does anybody else have any questions before we make a motion? Everybody good? I'll, take that motion.
Was this just like a clerical error, I guess, from,
Yes, Ian.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by member Kennedy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Mellon. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations again. All right. Number two, let's see here. We have the rezoning to professional. Did I miss something here?
Yes, Chair, that, you need a motion for the rezoning.
Yes,
I do or do not?
You do.
you do.
Yeah, there's two of them, that's what I thought, okay. All right, so I need a second motion for the rezoning of Araya office property to professional office services in District RZ 210727.
I'll make that motion as well.
I have a motion by member Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
By member Mellon. I'm sorry, by member Keller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Now you're good to go. Sorry. Okay, on to number C. We have 409 Ocoee Apopka Road PUD. Large-scale preliminary final site plan, LS 2021005, Development Service Director Mike Rumor.
Thank you. And this is the next step in the process, and from the rezoning that happened in June. And I do want to call out, make sure you saw that first page of the site plan, we flipped the site. The rest of the pages don't reflect that, but it matches the PD. We just flipped the driveways from the north to the south. So page one that says site flip exhibit, that's the correct final layout. We'll get all the other documents behind it. We just flipped the driveways. The buildings are the same, everything. Again, this was rezoned to plan unit development in June. It's approximately 4.76 acres. This was and it's on the east side of Ocoee Apopka Road, just north of Silver Star. This was a property that was for sale in the county, and we did a lot of reaching out, trying to get people to purchase it, to build something better than what people were asking could go there. And we found this developer that's putting together this plan, and so it's got some tight guidelines with funding, as you can understand. It just depends on which week you're getting funding, and so we didn't want to put it off until every page was absolutely correct. It's just really switching the driveway, so that's why you're seeing that. So this is again, it's right now, there's got a couple homes on it, has a plan unit development that approved 2 buildings, the total of 61,000 square foot. It's got a 29,000 square foot building up front that is all at grade. Will have a retail looking front. It could be many things over the time. Hopefully it'll have some retail uses, like we're seeing success at the north side of Ocoee Apopka Road and West Road. And it'll have a second building behind it that is at grade height. This map has not been updated, but it is in the city, and it has a commercial land use, and then the surrounding zoning is planned unit development now for this. The annexation and the PD back in June, it has the 2 buildings. They're dedicating 30 foot of right-of-way along the front of the building. This site plan is after that, takes into account that 30-foot dedication. Their stormwater pond is on site. They're actually going to help There's a ditch that runs to the back that ends up in Lake Apopka. They're designed under that stringent criteria, which will help things downstream. And we flip, so you have an entrance in here for the cars, then you have the truck entrance that'll utilize this area. It has a short distance between the truck bays, so it's gonna be more your box trucks. And so the way the site will operate will be, this is more of your retail front. This would probably be one user that has the office side and the rest warehouse. It's at 30,000 square foot as well. These buildings are the same size as the ones we have up on McGuire, where there used to be the Viking Supply Net building. They're about the same size as this. One user typically in there. And it creates a site that draws employment to it. It gives us an opportunity near that intersection of Silver Star to still reach some opportunity for retail in the area and not just have it go to flex users, but probably first generation flex users until things start to happen more in that area. And so this is the final site plan, preliminary final, and it's passed. We just have a couple comments left really on transportation. Since we flipped, we want to look at how some of those approaches, make sure the radius is there, but nothing major. Stormwater was checked off. The architecture is really nice. I've seen it's similar. They've done similar product over off Story Road in Winter Garden. It's going to be a blend of that with more windows on it to have more of the retail look and the different shades over. So we're excited about this project. We're able to get it in on top of other uses that just would have been your everyday run-of-the-mill uses. So appreciate the time.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for staff? I think we questioned this one to death the first time around. Is the applicant here? You want to say anything? You good?
I'm here to answer questions.
Perfect. We'll open it up to the public. We'll close it to the public. So one motion is going to be necessary on this to recommend the approval of the preliminary final site plan for project LS 2021005. Does anybody have any other questions? I will take a motion, please.
I'll make that motion since everybody's real quiet today.
We have a
I'll make
motion.
a motion to approve, make a recommendation of approval for 409 Ocoee Apopka Road, PUD, large-scale preliminary final site plan, project LS 2021-005.
Thank you. We have a motion from Member Mellon. Do I have a second?
I second that.
We have a second by Member Forges. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Congratulations.
Just wanted to state real quickly, the Palm Drive extension across the road's coming along. We were waiting on Spectrum to remove their lines off the Duke power poles. That is scheduled, funded, and they've got a meter, and they'll be removing everything. Then Duke will pluck out the poles, and the road will go in.
Sweet. All right, we got some fun stuff ahead of us here. We're gonna be doing number D, which is the LDC amendment to chapter 180, articles 2 and 5. This is a public hearing for mobile food dispensing vehicles, House Bill HB 1193. We have zoning manager Whitfield.
I'm sorry.
He's much taller than me.
Okay. Land Development Code update for mobile food dispensing vehicles. So the issue before the Planning and Zoning Commission is to whether or not to recommend approval of the updates to section 2-4 in Article 2 and sections 5-6 and 5-8 in Article 5 of the Land Development Code to incorporate the legislative changes under House Bill 1193. So the House bill was signed into law on June 29th, and it became effective July 1st. And what it did was it amended Section 509 of the Florida statutes to preempt the regulation of licenses, registration, permits, fees, and whatnot relative to mobile food dispensing vehicles, i.e. food trucks, to the state. The table shows some pros and cons that staff identified when we were reading the legislation. One pro is that we can regulate the placement of the mobile food trucks so that we can ensure that any site requirements for where that food truck is located are still being met. Another pro is that it is still subject to paying local business taxes. One con of the legislation is that we have to allow it somewhere in the city. The legislation specifically says that the local government cannot prohibit mobile food trucks in the entirety of the city's jurisdiction. The proposed changes that staff is recommending are changes to Article 2, specifically in 2-4, the definition section, to add a definition for mobile food dispensing vehicles, and that definition will come straight from the legislation. The next change is to Article 5. So there are two changes that we're proposing to Article 5. And I have them listed in reverse order from 5.8 to 5.6 because in 5.8, specifically subsection B4, B is the prohibited uses, and under 4, it states that vehicles or motor vehicles cannot be used for transactions and the conduct of business. We are suggesting that that definition or that requirement have an exemption that it doesn't apply to mobile food trucks, but that mobile food trucks have to meet the new requirements of accessory structures and uses under 5-6. So when you look to 5-6 in the Land Development Code in Article 5, there is language in there now that speaks to accessory uses and structures in residential districts, in agricultural districts. We don't have code references or code language that speaks to accessory structures in commercial and industrial districts. So staff is recommending that we add a subsection 1 and a subsection 2, place the existing residential language under subsection 1, and then under new subsection 2, put in the standards for accessory structures in general and accessory uses in general for the commercial and industrial zoning districts. So this slide shows the key points of the ordinance. The ordinance is attached in your attachments, or is included in your attachments, and it details in full what our recommendations are, but I pulled out 7 that I think are important to note. The first one is that the food trucks, or the accessory uses and structures for all commercial and zoning and industrial zoning districts, they cannot be located in the front building setback. The front building setback being sides facing a road right-of-way. They cannot be within 5 feet of the side and rear property lines, and they have to be screened entirely from any adjacent residential uses. They cannot interfere with or impede the safe vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site. They can't impede ingress-egress routes, loading, unloading zones, fire lanes, ADA accessibility, emergency services access, and of course the site distance triangle. They can't be allowed to park overnight unless the overnight parking are for vehicles that are specifically directly linked to the principal use, which would have been approved as part of a major site plan, a regular site plan approval. The parking spaces for the food trucks, they cannot occupy any parking that would be required for the principal use. So for example, if a restaurant is required to have, or a retail store is required to have 50 spaces, they can't park in any of those 50 spaces. They would have to be parked in like an extra or a surplus space or something like that. They cannot be within the right-of-way, on or over any sidewalks. They have to be on improved surfaces, so not grass or sod, and they can't be in open space areas. The hours of operation would be conforming to the hours of the principal use, so that there aren't any unexpected impacts to surrounding properties. And then number 7, any accessory structures or uses that are not part of the principal use shall be subject to its own business tax, and mobile food dispensing vehicles shall not be permitted to sell or distribute alcoholic beverages. So those are the key points. As you can see in the slide, staff is of course recommending that you recommend approval. and we are here to entertain any questions.
Oh, I got a big question.
And I just want to add a little bit more commentary. So the quick, elevator speeches, in our code, we only allowed sales from trailer vehicle if it's in front of your farm during the harvest period. That's what the code says. The state law says you have to allow them. You got to allow food trucks. You've probably seen food trucks for a while, like in front of the brewery, and we had the movie night. We did a special event permit to allow those. During COVID, we just allowed things to just operate. So there's food trucks that operated. So we're stuck with food trucks are allowed. You have to allow them in commercial zone. You don't have to allow them in right-of-ways. You don't have to allow them in residential districts, so we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna allow them just to pull up wherever they want along the side of the road, so they've gotta locate in a commercial center. So for instance, I had someone come in and I said, look, we can't tell you you cannot operate, but if you show me what parcel, I could show you the best place where I don't have to come code enforce you. So it was like the Quadro Center. They have a lot of parking available. I showed them a position you could be. You're not taking up usable parking. You're not blocking a drive aisle. That's a place you could go set up. But you can't set up permanently and put skirts and tables without, that's a site plan, because you're putting an accessory building there in that case. So we're looking at, we've looked at a lot of different jurisdictions. We don't want to we don't want to drive them away. There's plenty of places they've been located that work. Sometimes they pull up, I know on the weekends, weird places like that.
That's for toll road. That's a great place for.
Yeah, but that doesn't take up any parking.
Right, but it's in the front setback of the business.
Right, that's a double frontage lot. So that's things we have to consider. Yes, it has two fronts. So you can kind of, say which one, if you have two, that's different. If you just have the one, we've got to, if you can't, for instance, there's one up on Worst Road. It sits in front of the building a little bit, but it meets the front setback, and it doesn't block that drive aisle. That's what you want to protect, is blocking a drive aisle.
Okay, so the one in front of Toll Road, I know it's a different one every night.
Yes, right.
That is totally permitted under this ordinance.
It will be, yes. We've got to add the double frontage. If you have two fronts, there's a way you can make it work.
Okay.
And in Toll Road, it does work. That's a good.
Yeah, 'cause
That's the intent, is to allow that. We didn't put the double frontage criteria in
Because
there.
that would totally hurt their
Yeah,
business. That's
yeah.
one thing we want
So-
downtown is more businesses.
At the corner store there on Geneva and Blueford, right? They've been
Yeah, and that's another
parking
double
in front.
frontage lot. We've got to look, yes. We've got to look at that double
That
frontage.
store is a double frontage lot?
Yes, it's got Geneva and it's got Blueford.
Okay.
And so it has two fronts, so then you'd be putting it, behind the building.
Okay.
So that's, we got to look at that.
So when we're putting this legislation, or we're putting this together, I mean, is there a thinking now of putting into having where in the city we want to do a food truck lot? I mean, you look at like Lake Nonawa, Boxy Park, things like that, right, where they have.
This is not intended to do that. That's direction from the commission or city manager. This is just, food trucks are happening. The law changed. Our code doesn't meet law because we said you can't do it. And so we're just trying to provide the parameters, the correct definition, and then state, this is the problem. You can't block a drive aisle. You can't pull up and take, the shopping center with Mi Ranchito, they cannot fit a food truck in front there. They don't have enough parking. So you can't use up usable parking. If you have overflow, you have areas that can fit, it'll be able to work. And then it gives us some teeth to say, hey, you're not meeting this. And these are really just safety issues.
Why would we prohibit alcohol sales?
Because that gets into amplification of sound, distance to churches and schools. So it just creates another, maybe at some point we'll get to that, but this is such new legislation to the state and for us, we're taking the first step.
So if there's I'm gonna use it for instance, there's a special instance, would they get to sell alcohol in their food truck, would they get a special permit to do that then, above and beyond this legislation? Say look at the music festival, right, and there's There's trucks that show up to
Yes.
that and
Yeah.
they want to sell.
And that's a part of, they wouldn't be given a 2 COP, they don't have a site. We wouldn't be able to sign, they wouldn't have a regular alcohol license. It would be in that special permit, like a Best Fest, that would be. And that would be by the organizer, whatever property they're on.
Okay.
Would be doing that, whether it be a public, city, or
Yeah.
county, or,
Cool.
Okay, so in general, they typically do not have alcohol permits?
yeah, they don't have a site, yes.
So they have to apply if they ever have to. if they
What
ever-
happens is, it's sort of like an event at the Lakeshore Center. We would apply for a temporary permit to be able to sell the alcohol, and then the vendors would be able to do that.
But these food trucks typically do not have.
Yes, they do not.
Okay. And now, other question is, I think you prohibit grassy areas?
Yeah, that's with any parking. We don't want someone pulling into we have one tent, fireworks tent that we have. We've been shown by the property owner that the land's stabilized underneath it. It was part of the old Colony Plaza. So you'll see that it's on grass, but it's on really good stabilized ground. We don't know, we don't want them pulling in and having people drive, like pulling over there between the Fairfield Inn and the Smoothie King. That sand pit, if one goes in there, the cars are just gonna sink. So
Yeah.
we have code that says you have to park on an approved surface. It can be mulch or rock, but it has to be an approved surface. That's why we want these to be in the parking lot area of a shopping center. And so the vehicles that will park will not, if you have a commercial space with green area, that's open space. It's not meant to have stuff on it.
Regardless if the owner approves it?
Yes, correct. I mean, you know, if it gets to a point where, hey, I want this food truck and this is the place, if they can come in and show us, we could, you know, the general says not on grass, but if they can show us it's stabilized, like, part of City Hall's parking used to be on stabilized grass, but we know what was underneath it. So to get in there and talk about, unless it's stabilized with 57 stone or just not on the green area, if it's a hardship, they'll come to us and we'll work something out. Because they could, if it's not gonna take away open space, they could make it an approved parking place.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of that building where Ranchito used to be. Again, couldn't put a truck there on the parking lot, but to the south of it, that's a grassy area, and I don't see any problem with the truck being there.
What do you mean? We're
Ranchito down where Downers PC used to be,
where?
that, on Blueford.
Oh, the Mexican,
Correct.
Mi Ranchero, I think it is, over on Blueford where Domino's used to be, across from,
But is there enough parking there?
Up to the south of it, there's a huge open field.
That parcel was fenced. That's not the property of the Mi Ranchito. That's privately owned.
They don't
It was
own
fenced, the fence is
Well,
taken.
that's my
But
point.
yeah, no, that is
If
not,
the owner approves
that
it,
is
what's the
not,
problem?
that's purposely, that is not a stabilized area, and we do not want parking there, not at all. It can become a dust bowl, there's issues. You look at it, you'll see all the grass is dead where people are parking right off the edge
Yep.
of the pavement.
Correct.
does, under the naming of it, right, would a mobile food truck also, or in this naming, also count to say a dude that's got an offset smoker trailer on the back of his truck, or even for that matter, a hot dog cart?
I'm so sorry. The legislation provides a specific definition for food trucks or mobile food dispensing vehicles, and it includes things that can be towed.
Okay, cool, great.
So
All right.
for clarification, because there is another food truck that comes to mind with this discussion with, doesn't have a double frontage, and it's Silver Star and Ocoee Hills, right there in
Yes.
front of the barber shop. So under all of this,
That is in the county. That
That is
specific
county?
site
That
is
little
county,
parcel
yes.
county?
Yes. No, wait, that's the gas station across from it.
because I know right next
So,
door is
yeah,
where we.
so we need to
approved the
put in
medical
there for a double frontage that it doesn't occupy. So even if you say, typically you'd want it to front the secondary road, but in the case of the
King Taco.
brewery, their main road is Blueford. So we've got to look at that.
Right.
It'll be, most likely to be off the primary, except for on the secondary road. You can be within that area if you don't block the driveway. But the brewery, You know, maybe in the downtown, and maybe in that area in the downtown, we just need to have a designated food truck area on a lot that's.
Well, that's
commercial.
what I was
Yeah, so.
saying.
That wouldn't
And
work
that
for
would-
toll road though,
yeah,
because that's their business.
well, they just need something in the area.
Right.
You need food to go there. There's no one, you can't walk across the road right yet and get food. So it's not necessarily they need it on their lot, they just need it within that block. So you
No,
can
I
get
mean, I
food.
think with it being on their lot, we go there just because of what food truck night it is.
Right.
Oh, they got grilled cheese, oh, we're gonna go eat grilled cheese and get a beer, so.
Yeah,
I
but
think-
you would walk 30 feet to the south to get the same food, is what I'm saying.
Well, I could walk 100 yards down to a taco joint, but I'm not. I'm there to,
Yeah.
sit in the patio and enjoy the food
Well,
truck.
but
Because that creates the ambiance in that one location. So-
Yeah, but I can also tell you that you're either a restaurant or bar, or you're not.
Yep.
Then it's, can I sell a used car or a lawnmower that I put together?
Right.
So,
Well, you know, City Furniture had or they had Cousin's Lobster food truck yesterday in their parking lot all day long. So,
they've got overage of parking there.
do you have a question, Mr. Kennedy?
I do. You made a comment, you said if someone asked you where the best place on a lot was to put a food truck, you advise them. How is this is this food truck shows up, has the owner's permission? Oh, no, that's not allowed, you're
Well,
blocking that's
yeah.
gonna be enforced
Now we
once
can-
the horse is out of the barn?
Yeah, we can point them to the code. Now there is a code that'll say, if you've got to meet this criteria.
But they're not going to proactively ask for permission.
Then we will proactively tell them you're violating something. Now, our code says you can't be here, and that violates state law.
I also, I think, the one distinction between other accessory structures and the food truck, you said, was you would require a site plan for chairs, et cetera.
Right, if you
How
want to- yeah.
long can the truck be there before it's viewed as non-mobile?
Mm-hmm.
And you get to that, if they just anchor permanently, what's the time?
Well, part of our recommendation is that they can't park overnight, and they have to work within the hours of the principal's
So
business.
they have to leave and come back, not just shut it up?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Typically, the telltale sign is skirting and tables, and, then there's a canopy tent to the side, and those are the easy ones.
I think my only trepidation about it, if that's the right word, is the conforming to the business hours, right? Because there are some uses where that food truck would, I'll use for instance, Pep Boys right on 50. That may not be in Ocoee, but I'm just using as a for instance. For years, there was a food truck that would stay there in that parking lot that would be there till 2 or 3 in the morning because people would leave the drinking establishments and go there, right? And I mean, so Pep Boys closes at 8 o'clock at night.
So in my experience in other jurisdictions, food trucks are there on a lot because it's easy foot traffic. Whoever's working there or shopping there at that establishment, they're waiting for their car to be served, they're waiting for their wives to shop, whatever the case may be, they can grab a bite to eat when they're in that location. No one's going, it's less likely, and it's probably more disruptive to the environment of that lot if someone is operating a food truck to the point where people are going there at all hours of the night, which wasn't contemplated when that commercial establishment was put into place in the first place. So one of the things that ties our hands with the legislation is that we can't permit them, and we can't charge them a fee. The only thing really that we can do is locate them in a manner that doesn't interfere with the safety and the operation of the site. Because the food truck operation itself is a commerce, there's an exchange of goods, they are subject to Chapter 205, which is the local business taxing statutes, and they are all that makes them subject to our Chapter 119. And by that route, if they don't have an active local business tax with the city, they could be in violation of 119.
And we also thought about this, the one you're talking about is now the Ocoee Taco. And
We're
they
correct,
They
yeah.
were located right behind Just Breaks because it was a piece of land, a part of the U-Haul Center, which was in the county. So we thought about that, but our thoughts early was, in this point, is at least that it does provide a protection that if you have your business, Lou has his business, and a food truck shows up there on Saturday night at 9 o'clock to 2 a.m., and he doesn't know about it, and he finds out, at least there is a step to protect that business owner. Now, if they enter into, if it gets to where there's businesses that want to enter in agreements with food trucks, and it's after hours, we can look to provide legislation. But right now, we think we're providing the minimum best legislation possible. We are kind of, people are pulling up. We know, I've heard people pull up a smoker on a Sunday, and the business owner may not know, but at least we have something to go to say, this business is in operation, you shouldn't be here.
So can we make where, let's say Lou does want somebody in there from 9 to 2 a.m., can we make it to where that food truck can come to the city and get a special exemption? Keep the conforming,
To be,
business
like,
hours.
if Lou wants to, allow a food truck in his operation after hours,
This person.
keep the
Yeah,
conforming statute, right? But then make and it doesn't, it can be for whatever, right? I mean, I would say I would like to make a special concession at the approval of staff, right? So it doesn't have to go through a large permitting process or just a special exemption that it can be approved by. Staff.
The issue is, we don't have the ability, if they had to come to us, that makes it easier, but they do not.
Right.
And so, all we have is that regulation to say, hey, you're blocking the entrance or an exit, or you're in a drive aisle, or you're across a sidewalk, or you're taking and that is a problem during the normal business hours.
Yep.
By allowing it after hours, you've got to come up with a whole set of code. Lighting, is the parking lot have lighting? Does that business not have parking lot lighting because they don't, so it's just, I guess if we run off enough people, if it becomes a problem, that'll tell us we need to come up with that legislation to handle it. But I don't know at this point, we're ready to really get into,
I don't know, I'm torn. I think, this can be viewed as, like some overreach. I mean, if a business has the room and the capacity, it can put it in there and they want it because it drives more money to that business. And now, like, the city wants to come in with this and say, you can't do that, you can't park there.
Right.
But you can go park, way down there. That effectively hurts the revenue of a business. And I'll use a toll road as an example. People go to toll road, businesses driven downtown now based on the brewery and what food truck they have, and taking this away or making it.
But the food truck's going to operate when they're open.
What?
The food truck is going to operate when they are open.
They do, I know
Yeah.
there's two different
and so-
arguments here. I know there's a time.
So what I'm saying is,
like-
they just happen, for them, they're open at night.
Yeah, when the
So
toll
it's-
road closes,
right.
they're gone, and
But
actually,
you're not going to have many places. You have where the ABC is. There's
right.
there's 4 different businesses there. Or
But
5.
you got a big parking lot behind it, though.
Yes, you do.
But you got a big parking lot behind
You
it.
do.
That
So
has, would you consider that dual frontage?
no, that
Since you
doesn't.
can come in off
the
of
rear, it's
McGuire? Blueford?
Yeah, it does. It does have dual frontage. Yeah, it has a direct access on the Blueford. And so, really, convenience stores are open late.
Yeah.
You're not really gonna, I'm just trying to think of, I'm trying to think of a building that this would really injure. There's not gonna be that many.
No, I think right now you're right. There's not much that it will injure,
I'm
right?
trying to think of a standalone business, maybe like where Dr. Cohen's Eye Care is. There's a bunch of businesses there. They all close. They're medical related. They close down. And if whoever owns that wants to lease to a food truck to go in there at night, this would prohibit that.
right. I don't have a problem with the time. I think if a business is open, and when they close,
But-
I'm all in favor.
Yeah.
Food truck
But
needs to
a
go.
food truck is not, if it's parked back in there, there's nothing going on. So you're not really gonna get the people.
And is it,
That's-
once this goes into effect, is this code enforcement?
Yes, that's because it's in the land development code,
Okay.
it's,
All right. Listen, I agree with that. I think it's a great idea. I wish we would have already come up with a food truck zone or a food truck platform, like I said, Boxy Park has and stuff like that in our you know, in our
Well,
downtown master plan
Yes.
or in the.
So you get the privilege right now of having this topic brought to you before the commission, because it comes to you before the commission.
Yeah.
So as we bring this up to the commission in November, it will perhaps elicit discussion on something like that. But I'm not going to come before the commission and say, hey, they changed the rule for food trucks, we got to start thinking of
Yeah.
what we're going to do. But
Right.
let's come with the language, let's get something going, and then it'll organically work.
All right, we have to open it up to the public for comments. Is there anybody here that'd like to speak?
And again, you can condition your approval, you know, you can say, hey, I
Yes.
want you to look at this, I would
Exactly
like
do
this. You're the citizen, you're the city populace, you tell us,
I'm gonna close the public hearing and bring it back up to the dais. We're gonna need, we'll need one motion on this. We'll need a motion to recommend to approve the revisions of the Land Development Code, relating to mobile food dispensing vehicles. And I would also ask that whoever makes the motion to please also make the stipulation to have the city council look at as well, having a food truck zone or a, you know, food truck platform, either in the downtown development area or by the new city hall and, the park that's there. So I'll take a motion.
I'm gonna attempt to make that motion to approve, but I'd also like to add like a stipulation that, businesses, I don't know how you'd word it, but if a business can prove that there's loss of revenue or income based off of this, that there can be like a special exemptions that would allow what's already been existing for the last 2 years.
Well, you know, I think I agree with Mike, and we just need to put in a flat line first, right?
I think, well, what he's wanting is an opportunity to operate after the business hours.
No, I'm not concerned about after hours. I'm saying if a business wants a food truck at their location during their business hours, the business should have, or be allowed to have that food truck at their location, at their request. Now, I'm not talking times. If that business closes at 7 o'clock,
Well, they can as
that
long
food
as
truck
they,
is
they can as long as they meet the requirements
Right,
that
but
we're gonna
I
put
think there's,
together.
the double frontage isn't written in here as.
Yeah, double
right
frontage,
now.
so we'll, yes.
Can I ask a question? If I own a business and I say my hours are currently 9 AM to 9 PM, and I decide on my own property with my business, I want to put a food truck out front, and I say, now my hours of operation are 9 AM to 11 PM, do you have any authority to argue that?
I mean, there's,
I can set my hours at my discretion, correct?
yes.
So there's really no need for this.
Well, there is, because I think just, for instance, the Just Breaks, you know it's closed.
Right.
But I mean, there's a way to do a workaround, yes.
No, I strongly
you know,
agree that it needs, because,
for-
for example, we talk about, we were talking about another, place up in Fountains West. There was a discussion about the drive-through and the hours of
yes.
operation and the noise. And I can only imagine that somebody then puts a food truck there that's open
Right.
3 hours later. No, I strongly agree that it should be with the hours of operation of the business, but I don't think we need a review, because a business can set their hours if they want to.
Yes.
They can change their
Right,
hours.
and if you think about on Silver Star in front of the Esporta, there's a little strip center, it has a 24-hour ATM. That business never closes,
Right.
right? So, one of the suites is nothing but an ATM.
I agree.
I do want to point something out. If you consider a condition or a recommendation that a business allows food trucks to occupy their property when the business principal is closed, one of the requirements of a local business tax receipt is that if the person is leasing it, the property owner has to give authority. So you might have to consider a liability issue. If someone operates a food truck at 2 in the morning and someone gets injured, we'd be violating a property owner and not the tenant of that shopping center who wants that business. The other thing that I like to point out is that if the business is operating and they're functioning and they're getting their profits and their multiplier, regardless of the food truck being there, not having a food truck there isn't something that's going to sway whether or not they continue to operate. So in order for us to add a condition that says they may lose revenue, we have to expect people to take account of what revenue they have now with or without the food truck.
Exactly.
And something comes to mind that I think, it's the worst case, but the malls close at 10 or 11, that place, you can fit, it could be every food truck just happens to pull up at the mall. And then, I mean, there's no great legislation. There is one, I would just want to talk about, one of the cities, Orlando, somebody has a permitting process. If you want to locate in a right-of-way, they've identified the places, and you can pay the city and get a permission to go in the right-of-way. But with that, the hours, it's just tough. It's just,
Just
you're
for
not going to get
clarification.
it's not going to work either way. But I'd rather come to me and say, hey, you're driving away an opportunity, and then try to figure out how to fix that specific example, instead of just not having something, and then we become the food truck place where everyone just shows up the last 2 hours and they're pulling up evereverywhere, and we can't even code enforce them.
Right, for
So
clarification, I don't have a problem with the time, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
My sole issue is if a business owns that lot and they have room to put a food truck in it and they want it, who's the city to say, well, you can't do it? That's where I'm having a little issue.
We're not saying you can't do it. What we're saying is you can't take up parking that you need. You can't block a drive aisle.
Right, okay.
Okay, you can't be located in a road or on a sidewalk.
Right, I
or
agree.
So we're giving parameters to say you can do everything but this.
Okay.
As long as you meet that.
I mean, one solution to that is they could come in for a site plan modification, install those additional parking spaces, and then they'd have surplus parking.
Right.
As you said, that principal business take responsibility for that food truck.
Correct.
Say, I'm starting a new operation, I'm gonna expand my business hours, I'm gonna take the necessary steps to get, it's my insurance, it's my work comp, et cetera.
So,
Because the statute says that we can't require them to do it, but there's nothing that says that they can't voluntarily come up to us and ask for something.
so that means they could, in theory, put a slab out there and that they could park on, and that would meet the criteria.
Well, but you put a slab on there, you've got to do a site plan because you've added impervious, you got to amend your drainage permit, so that we get that opportunity to look at it. But if the said business says, oh, my business hours, I'm going to stay open later, now I want to have a food truck, it's still, if your business is open, you've got to meet your minimum required parking.
Yeah.
If you have extra parking, then it works.
And I'm not getting the impression that anybody's really arguing the extra time. I think everybody's somewhat on an agreement that when the business closes, you're closing.
Yeah.
I think the question is more like, okay, I've got room, but it's on the grass for them to park. Is this really, so I have to, because it says you can't park on the grass anymore, I can't have my food truck here that I normally have and has been making me some money and is bringing customers my way. And now that I'm taking this food truck away, I'm going to lose that group that follows that food truck or what have you.
Okay, and my answer to
that's
that,
where-
I got you.
That's my issue,
My
exactly.
answer to that is if it's a vacant parcel, there's no business there. So the one next to me, Ranchito, is a vacant parcel, it's not a part of their complex, there's no business.
Right.
But if you have a green space, if you're an older development, the newer developments maximize everything they have. But what is that green space? Is it on a drain field? Is it on a place for freeboard to come? Is it a part of the drainage system? Is it a part of the mandatory open space? Is it a part of Wakaiva open space? If a business, Mr. Liu's business, he has some green around him, if he wanted to do that and said, hey, I want to add this, okay, you can do it. If it can work under a site plan and we can make it happen, then that will help that business owner. But to willy-nilly just be parked in a place that's supposed to have a landscape, it's a required 25-foot buffer to a residence, and now you have that's what it's stopping. But if there's room, there's a way to overcome it.
I know I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but let's move off of the food trucks. Is section 5-8 right now, is that how it's already worded? I guess my question is this, and it kind of came to me. Snap-on tool trucks, this applies to like the Snap-on driving around or so forth, correct? They can't stop in the city of Ocoee to sell whatever, like if there's a new home division, they can't drive through there and sell their tools, as if I'm reading that correctly?
Yes, yes.
This is specifically for food dispensing, not,
Okay, I just saw it was like it prohibits the use of motor vehicles for business transactions.
that's
Yes.
It
existing.
does not apply to mobile, you know.
Yes,
We
that's,
have the door-to-door sales, we have a permit called a peddler.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think we're gonna wrap this thing up here.
So this is good, this is, we
You
have
know.
the land development code, and I don't know, you know, I don't know.
It's been
what
great
you
discussion.
guys- Yeah, you're coming at it fresh from us. We think we have it, we're in our office, we forgot the double frontage.
Okay.
Excellent comment, we need to put in the double frontage.
So I'm gonna start back up again by saying we do need a motion for that. And in that motion, we would like the double frontage to be changed and that this be, when it be brought up to the city commission, that staff also recommend some sort of, food truck zone or food truck area in the downtown development area or in the city hall area. Any-
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I have to contradict that.
Okay, well then just don't make the motion.
The city does not own all of the designated areas.
No, I understand that, but I'm
And-
saying they need to look at making an area of that sort. We own a lot of land in this city, so.
And here's the thing, we go along and we do that, and we got one food truck saying, hey, this is designated, and I'm coming here tonight,
Yeah, it's mine.
it's mine, it's designated.
No, that's, if you ever been to Boxy Park in Lake Nona,
No.
there's 12 or 13 food trucks, right? It's a whole thing, but
Well, what I'm getting at is I think the city should, or the city's marketing department should be allowed to say, hey, food truck nights southeast of the city hall at at their own determination, not necessarily designated spot.
oh, okay.
You guys decide where you want a food truck night to be.
I don't think that's what really I'm saying, but I understand what you're saying. So I need a motion.
Anyone can make a motion.
Anybody can make a motion.
I,
Kind, it doesn't have to have a strict.
It doesn't, yep.
It can be more
You
broad.
can make whatever kind of motion you want.
Actually, I'm going to make the motion, or I'm going to make the motion for what you said. Brad.
Thank you.
I think that's the way I'll take his wording and make the
And
motion.
just
it.
for clarification,
I-
what I'm talking about is not that, hey, you can only have food trucks here, there. They need to, there's a certain, you know, you make a zone or you make an area, there's a piece of property, right, that is made to, you know, to have multiple food trucks in it. It becomes a thing for
I think what,
I
the
get
community.
that. I just don't like the word designated an area
Yeah,
for them
I
to do it.
just-
I get what you're
I
saying.
just think, I look at it as when we used to have the food truck Friday nights.
Yep.
It was a quote-unquote designated area that all of the food trucks, and you had,
Right.
I don't know, what, 10 or 12 food trucks at one point
So
there?
choosing by them.
Yeah.
Because it was on public property, we selected, you were.
Correct.
one
So
of-
choosing
by
you.
one,
Correct.
person, what do you call that represents a bunch of,
All right.
the person that gets you gigs.
Yeah.
Correct. No, we get that, but
Agent.
at any given time, you could say, hey, it's over here this time.
Yeah.
It's over
But
there next.
But yeah, I can see something like that. So yeah, I'll go with that motion, that you were asking for, and I'll
Perfect.
make it.
Can I just say, Mr. Chair, I believe your motion is to pass the city staff's recommendation.
Correct.
And with a caveat that the city commission discuss,
That staff bring it up to city commission about
that staff bring up to city commission discussing some sort of area to be designated for food trucks.
correct.
Can we add to
And the
that?
double,
Double fronted.
the
And
double frontage.
You see, yeah, let him finish his motion first.
If we can make a motion to that effect.
All right, is that what you want, Joel?
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay, we have a motion to approve, so now you can either ask to add on, or you can make it
I'd
a
like to
second.
ask to add on to
Okay.
that, with the city to look at
I'm sorry,
existing-
1 second. Should we get a second for that
There is
first?
one motion on the floor, it needs to be seconded, if it is not, and if it is, we'll vote on it, if it is not, then we can hear other motion.
Perfect. Can I have a
Can we
second?
discuss, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Well, would they be able to amend that motion before it gets voted on?
You may ask to amend the motion
I'm
at
asking
the
to amend
chair's
the
discretion, he has not asked for a second.
Okay.
Well, I just, because I know you're looking to to add on to it, so you're looking to
Right.
amend the motion, and so, but we could start with the motion that I presented. It could get seconded, and then there could be an amendment to that motion, correct?
So then I'll say, before I ask for a second, I'll ask, are there any additional questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there just needs to be one motion to be seconded. and
Correct.
ultimately
All
voted
right.
on. So
Yes.
as long as we have that motion on the floor, the chair can take it to a vote.
Okay, go ahead, Scott.
I think it'd be nice for the commission to consider your recommendation. Can you explain to me why it needs to be tied to this? What's the?
Because that's the avenue when staff is gonna be speaking to the commission about it, right? If not, when you and I are at the next meeting, we can bring it up, right?
Right.
But it's in that avenue, it's gonna be agended on the meeting, so it's a perfect time for them to discuss it. Maybe it gives staff a little extra time to research it and bring up some more to that topic.
Okay, that's what I want to.
Jason?
I'm
sorry.
I'll second that motion, and then he can amend it, or what do you want, how do you want to do that?
Well, before I take your second, I'm gonna let Jason have, Mr. Mellon have any
My
comments.
my addition would be just have the city look at economic impact to local businesses that already host food trucks and have for the last 2 years.
Okay.
So how that gets all worded in. So basically, let the city council look at it and,
Well, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but what his staff told us is there's really no way to look at a private company's finances, or, you'd have to go and ask. I just don't think it's feasible.
Yeah, that was a problem with, a restaurant is, it's not a bar when 51% of their sales comes from food.
Yeah.
Who's gonna review that? Our finance director gonna review every,
Right.
the books, it's
Yeah.
just.
That's garbage in, garbage out information.
Are there a number that are regularly operating in the same place in the city? Is that number
I'd say
5 or
there's
10?
3 that
Yeah.
are during the day. I've heard, and a guy on the weekend with a smoker, and there might be others at night.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're only talking about, there's maybe 4 or 5 in the entire city right now, right? You got the guy on Ocoee Hills Road, King Taco, you got the dude at the brewery, you got the dude now that's showing up over at that little place I was telling you about, then there's 2 other, and that's it. I mean, so, we don't have a huge food truck scene right now, but if,
I guess I'm asking the inverse to Jason's question. Are you currently aware of a food truck that's operating with the principal business's permission that would be eliminated by this act?
If we don't do the double frontage, we'll fix those out.
that's in, by the way.
if double frontage is in there, I'm good.
But as far as we know, we're
Double
not
frontage is
currently harming the principal owner of the business.
Correct. And what I'm seeing, we're getting a lot more people asking. There's a place out of East Orlando, Bullfrog something, that puts these things together. And they're costly, so people, there's a good pattern I'm seeing. They're looking to buy the Bullfrog, they do it up for you, they're coming to ask us questions.
Yep.
And that gets us in. They don't have to though. They don't have to come see us at all. So we're seeing people are coming to us because they're investing. The person that converts their trailer and does it on their own, they're gonna break every law. But the person that buys
Yeah.
really, as long as it gets licensed, that's all that matters. But I'm seeing more people that are looking to get into it as a business and doing their due diligence. And that's refreshing. But after a while, all these people are gonna be operating and start following where the flow of the people are and start coming up with strategic ways to get extra sales. And that's where we could see that.
Yeah.
But it'll be down the road.
Vice Chair Mellon, I would ask that you take your, off the,
Withdrawal.
the
I
amendment,
withdraw my recommendation.
because I don't know if I could vote for it with it on there. so.
Mr. Chair, there's one motion on the floor.
Yes.
Perhaps it would be beneficial to
Repeat it?
before you do that.
Yes, so we are looking to approve Joel's motion, which included approving the House bill and also the double frontage, and also staff bringing up to the commission a food truck zone or a food truck type establishment, event deal. So we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I will, since I was a problem child, I will make the second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion from Member Keller to approve and a second by Vice Chair Mellon. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Perfect. All right. That was great.
Man, we can talk 30 minutes over a PUD, and we talk an hour over this.
Well, that was good. I learned a lot on that, though. You know, it was great. All right, so we have another LDC amendment. This is to Chapter 80 as well for Articles 2 and 5. This is for home-based businesses, House Bill HB 403, Zoning Manager Whitfield.
Okay, thank you. I need a coffee break. So the issue is whether or not the Planning and Zoning Commission will recommend approval of the updates to Section 2-4 in Article 2 and Section 5-17, Article 5 of the Land Development Code to incorporate the legislative directive from House Bill 403 regarding home-based businesses. Like the other one, this is new legislation. It was signed into law on June 29th and became effective on July 1st of this year. It amended Section 559.955 of the Florida statutes to restrict local governments from enacting or enforcing any ordinances, regulations, or policies, or to take any action to license or otherwise regulate a home-based business. The statute was pretty short, but we came up with a good list of pros and cons. So some of the pros that came out of the legislation is that it now requires the employee or the operator of that home-based business to actually reside in the home. Currently, our code does not have that provision, so we have seen applications that we've denied because the person was renting an entire house to operate their landscape business in a residential district. The legislation also sets a limit to up to 2 residents living in the house, up to 2 employees not living in the house to operate and work at the house. We can regulate the heavy equipment. So the legislation added a definition for heavy equipment. It includes equipment and vehicles. And so if the heavy equipment is visible from the street or from the adjacent property, we can require that they be screened. Parking and traffic that's generated by this home-based business can't exceed the volume or the demand for a house that would not have a home-based business. The parking has to be in a legal parking space. Like the food trucks, they have to be on an improved surface. They can't be within the right-of-way or on or over sidewalks. And the property, this is the one very key factor, is that the property has to maintain the residential character. So the house itself can't be modified to no longer look like a house, and the operation of the home-based business can't create an environment where that block or that neighborhood isn't functioning like a residential neighborhood. And it still has to pay the local business tax because it is a commerce. Some cons that we found was that we can't prohibit the type of occupation, whereas before our code had a list of uses that would not be considered a home-based business. The new legislation basically says, anything that can operate in whole or in part could be considered a home-based business. One big con is that retail transactions are now allowed at a residential dwelling. Our current definition of home occupation does not allow for retail, so this is a very big change for us. Any retail transaction has to be in the house. It can't be in an accessory structure like the garage or on property, but they can do incidental business activities on accessory structures or on the residential lot. And the fourth one is that we can no longer limit the amount of the house square footage that's used for the occupation. Currently, we have a limitation of 30%. We can't have that limitation anymore. It can be in whole or in part. So some of the proposed changes that we have, again, is in Article 2, Section 2-4, to add the definition of heavy equipment using the statutory language. And we are also recommending that we shorten the definition of a home occupation The reason for this recommendation is that it has standards in it that are essentially mirrored in 5-17. So we didn't see a need to have standards in two locations, so we're removing the standards from the definition. The next change is in Article 5, in Section 5-17. This is the section in the LDC that regulates home occupations. So we are suggesting, and again, the ordinance has all of the details, but we are suggesting a change that the home-based business operator is residing in the house, and we can look on the property appraiser's website to see who the homeowner is, or they can provide a lease or something like that. Only up to 2 employees not residing at the house can work at the house. They can have as many independent contractors as they want, they just can't work at the house, no more than 2. As I mentioned, we put in their criteria for the parking and the traffic, similar to what I just said. The heavy equipment needs to be screened from the street and from residents in the area. It has to maintain the residential character, and again, they're paying the local business tax. So I'm sure there's going to be ample discussion on this one too, but of course, we are recommending that you recommend approval of the changes.
Let me go ahead thank you. Let me go ahead and open the public hearing and close it quickly since there's nobody here.
Let me just add on.
Yeah.
So in our code, Article 2 is definition. Our definition for home occupation is almost a half a page. We list things that are not considered home occupations. The law changed. You can do any occupation out of your home. We can't limit that. So we have to take that out because we had limitations on that. And so that's going to really clean up for Article 2 because that's our definition page. It's going to define the statute.
Can I ask a quick question on that? So in the terms of home rule, right, can't we use that as home rule to keep our home occupation?
Not it is preempted.
Home rule, I think, is county, not state.
No, I mean, it's,
There's local home rule.
Yeah,
Yeah, local home rule.
County or from the state. So this law fell on us. We have to abide by the law. And so, we're not adding, the only thing we're adding extra that you won't find in the statute is parking.
yeah.
We have code that says a couple things. Okay. First and foremost, you can't exceed 50% impervious on your lot, or if you're in a plan unit development, it may have a design for 60% or something. You can't exceed the maximum impervious of the zoning district. That is the first stopgap. And where that comes into play is we require every single family home to have 2 parking spaces. If you have, typically, there's the houses that have 1-car garage, they have 2 parking spaces. If you have a business and you have a family and you have 2 workers coming, if you have workers, which we have a local business not far operating out of a home, they have a moving truck business, and the workers come and park along the street. Well, guess what? The new law says you cannot park on the street. We couldn't do anything about that. Now we can. If you have a house and you have a family and you have teenagers that have cars and you have 2 employees come, you got to have parking for them. So if you've converted your garage into this business, now you're down 2 parking spaces, you have 2 left. You've got to have 2 for a house, you've got to have 2 more for your employees. Well, we have another code that says up to 50% of your front yard can be used for parking. So you can establish another parking space or 2 if it can fit, but you've got to maintain that 50% impervious.
Yeah.
So this is really the only teeth we're able to provide extra into the statute. The statute says, you know what, you cannot regulate. For instance, we have a new subdivision, and the lady has a barber, she has a salon in her garage. That was prohibited. We could code enforce it. We used to prohibit it.
Yeah.
The cop said that's not a home. That is now permitted. We can't stop anything other than, okay, your trips, your traffic, you can't park in the road. Okay, this variance we have, that back building cannot become the commercial use for whatever that does. But that's a fact. That's just what the state law says. It has to be the principal use, not an accessory structure.
Does her garage though have to have, have to meet certain barber standards, like with a sink or drainage or whatever?
We don't even get an opportunity to check that.
How's that enforced? Do we get a warrant or something like that? Because I mean, it's a home business, so it's not
Well,
like
it's
you
now
can
it's
go-
allowed.
Yeah, I
Before,
mean,
we could
now
go-
going forward,
Yeah.
right? So
But-
she has to get a business license, right, with the city of Ocoee to put a barber shop in there?
Yes, but we can't ask them for any other licenses. Same thing with the food trucks.
And you can't go in and inspect the garage like you can inspect a user at a,
Not unless they come in for a building permit. For instance, we don't have a limitation on 220 amps. So we had a house, we think they were cooking for off-site use. They converted their garage into a separate kitchen.
yep.
There's no requirement that says you can't have but two 220 amps, for your oven and your dryer. It was,
So when they come to get an occupational license,
we just say, how many employees, what's the name of your business?
we can't put any other
The
restrictions.
Yes,
address
yes.
of the business.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
But we
This
can't
law-
put any,
The address, but they can go anywhere. They can go in any residential district. You can't stop it.
Right. Didn't this law come about though, mainly because most of the populations are working from home during COVID, and that's why this originally
Well,
started?
it's interesting, these laws you have, one law that says, you can't, if you turn in, the no more anonymous code enforcement calls, you have to give a name. So we can't take any more anonymous code enforcement calls. It's really a property rights. There's a requirement for a property rights element. We just brought that. There's a requirement now that food trucks have to be allowed. You've got to let home businesses. So it's during that time, things did change, but
so we just approved a couple months ago or last year, whenever it was, right? We approved that salon up there on,
that was on a commercial piece PUD where you had to live work.
okay.
Yes.
So that's not affected.
That's not.
Okay, cool. Anybody else have any questions?
For instance, we have a business, a guy that's running a internet car sales out of his house. He's got a bunch of cars that are parked over the road. We had no way, because we have provisions that allow you to park on your road. You can have you can have a traffic enforcement agreement if you're in a HOA, gated private road like this one is. So now what we can do is we can limit the amount of inventory. He can only park in his driveway, or he can expand if he has the impervious to make another space, but we can now remove those cars from out of the road.
Cool.
That's all we can do. He can operate.
Signage?
There's a thing in our code that says you're allowed to have 1 square foot sign. You can't change the front. You can
Yeah,
have a
I saw
sign, but
the-
it's like
keep
1 by
the
1.
nature of the
Just,
residential
yeah,
elevation or
yeah.
something.
Scott Kennedy Esquire. You can put that on
I'm
your
gonna start
house.
cutting hair out of my house.
So,
Yeah, me too. I'll come see you.
so
Yeah.
I got a question on the screening, because if you have a heavy grade backhoe or something in your business, what kind of screening are you looking at so that,
Yep. This actually helps us, because presently by code, we only have that trailers over a certain size and boats have to be behind the house, behind a 6-foot fence. This now, if that bobcat or backhoe, whatever, is on a trailer, okay, a code says it has to be behind a fence. Now you also have to screen it from the neighbors on the rear and side, which you didn't have to
right?
under. So now it kind of, the law provides some beefing up of that for us and for code enforcement. But it doesn't really define screening, it doesn't do the best job of
Yeah,
defining
I guess that was
screening.
where I was
6-foot
going
opaque
with it.
fence or-
Do we wanna do that
Does
now?
that mean that they're gonna allow, that we're gonna have to allow, like, outbuildings or something?
Well, the statute says that local governments may regulate the parking or storage of heavy equipment at the business, which is visible from the street. It doesn't say public or private, it's just street or neighboring properties. So we have the flexibility to require as stringent or not stringent screening as we like. However, just keep in mind, you don't expect to find a bunch of backhoes in a residential neighborhood
Yeah.
either. Or, tower trucks, bucket trucks and things like that.
We got one of ours.
No, you look more to see, landscaping trailers, tree trimming trailers,
Yeah.
bucket trucks, tree
The
trimming
majority
bucket
of the
trucks.
home-based, the local business tax receipts that we received, I think I processed probably 6 or 7 this week, and it's only Tuesday. Most of them are offices of convenience, people doing small business sales online, telehealth, things like that, where they are not really doing a lot of heavy stuff. And the ones that are doing construction type work for residential and commercial construction projects, they use their house as their office, and they order the goods and they ship the goods to wherever they're doing the work.
Yeah. So I would say if anybody, when we get to it, they do make a motion if they want to make an addition to that screening where it be what do you consider 6 foot opaque? Yeah. So, in that being said, then one motion is necessary. I need a motion to approve the revisions of the Land Development Code retaining to home-based businesses.
One comment, if I may ask, I'm sorry. The owner must live on the property. How does that, how do you regulate that with a home health business? Because most of these owners don't live in those home health businesses.
They have, right
Typically
now,
just a CNA.
are you asking for the sites where the operator is a tenant?
Well, correct, because this says that the homeowner must reside on the property, but most home health businesses that are operating in residential neighborhoods, the owners don't live there.
That's a different set of rules, statutes.
Well,
You're talking about
Explain to
home-based
me.
business for
No, he's
telehealth?
talking about an ALF out of the home of 5 or 6 bed.
Oh,
Correct.
those are specifically, that's in chapter 419 of the Florida statutes. So community residential homes as defined by statutes is a residential dwelling serving 7 to 14 persons that are defined by different sections of the statutes under ACA, the Health Administration Agency. There's 2 provisions in that 419 legislation. One is the definition, 4 to 17. The other is a subset to that, which says that any community residential home operating or serving 6 or fewer, they have to be treated as residential. It's not a business.
okay, well, thank you for clarifying that.
Boom.
We have criteria.
Pretty good.
For that. That's pretty successful, so.
Okay.
Depending on how many people you have staying at the house, it can change your rating of the house from an R5 to an R6. And it does require full
ADA.
fire sprinklers, ADA, a lot of stuff, but it's separate.
Yeah, a lot of those businesses or a lot of those home residential places, they limit themselves to 5 or serving 5 residents simply because they don't want to have to upgrade the building itself.
Cool. Anybody like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion to approve the Land Development Code update for House Bill 403, home-based businesses, with an addendum of a revision of the definition of screening to mean 6 foot opaque screening all around, as it concerns to large construction equipment.
Cool. We have a motion by Vice Chair Mellon to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion to approve by Vice Chair Mellon and a second by Member Forges. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. All right, last but not least, so close to 8 o'clock. Look at that. So close. This is gonna be F, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment. This is a comprehensive plan text amendment for the adoption of the 5-year schedule of capital improvements and update of the capital improvement element CPA 2021-006, zoning manager Whitfield.
Thank you. I do want to make a correction, and that is that there is no CPA number. The legislation changed in 2011, which states that this is no longer an amendment, text or otherwise, to the comp plan, and the local governments have the authority to adopt it by ordinance. So it doesn't get a CPA number, and it's not considered a text amendment. That's subject to state purview.
And I hired because he used to work for the state agency.
Do you confirm that, sir?
That's their wheelhouse.
So,
If you're curious, I cited those sections in the whereas clauses of the ordinance.
so do we have to do anything on this, or?
No, when you make your recommendation, it'll just be without the project number.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so the issue before you is whether or not you would recommend approval of the amendment to the capital improvements element, CIE, and update of the 5-year schedule of capital improvements within the comp plan in accordance with section 163.3177, parens 3, and also our own policy 1.5, which requires the city to annually update our capital improvements element and schedule. So just a little bit of background. Under Florida statutes, each local government has to adopt a comprehensive plan, and that comprehensive plan has to have a capital improvements element, a CIE. That CIE has to contain a schedule of capital improvements that are designed to address any deficiencies over a 5-year time period.
So, for instance, if you're a Joe developer, you go to the comprehensive plan, you go to the capital improvement element, you find the 5 years, and say, oh, look at that, they're gonna build a road right by my property. I don't need to do that. That's the thought.
Right. As I mentioned, it's not an amendment to the comprehensive plan, and it may be adopted by ordinance. In other words, once this is adopted by the commission, we just prepare the transmittal and we send it to the state agency as a courtesy. They don't even have the authority to review it or give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. The proposed 5-year schedule is taken directly from the city's 2022 budget. It's the very last table, which is the 5-year schedule. So nothing that we are proposing in the ordinance is new to this commission or to the city commission. And basically, the ordinance that is included in your attachments just introduces tables 6A through 6D.
And so this capital improvement list is not up for debate, it's already been adopted under the budget. Some places look at the capital list prior to the budget. We look at it in the city, the way we operate, in Ocoee, we operate, we look at it at the same time. So once the budget is officially adopted, then we have the document to use to do the annual thing. If, let's say, this document was approved during April workshops, then we could bring it earlier, but we have to wait for it to get adopted.
So the next series of slides is basically taking excerpts from the 2022 capital budget. So in the CIE, it lists the 5 levels of service or 5 facilities that the city is responsible for maintaining: transportation, utilities, water, sewer, stormwater, drainage, solid waste, and I'm sure recreation. School concurrency went away. So based on the analysis and the needs identified in each of the departments that went into the requested projects that ultimately got approved by the city commission, the projects that you see in this presentation only reflects those improvements for which city staff in the various departments identified a need for improvements. So table 6A is Parks and Recreation, 6B is Stormwater and Drainage, C is Transportation, which includes road capacity projects and road operations, and then the last one is Utilities, and it's a long page, so I just chopped it up in half. And that's it. So with that, we are recommending that you approve the amendment to the capital improvements element to update the element and the 5-year schedule in the city's comprehensive plan in accordance with the Florida statutes and our own policy 1.5.
Thank you. I'm gonna open it to the public. I'm gonna close it to the public. Any questions?
Motion to approve?
I have a motion to approve by Member Keller. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Member Kelly, by Member Kennedy, excuse me. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Call it a day.
Thank you.
That's approved. I have to say, in my tenure, so far, we've had a lot of very good zoning managers, but you are by far the best we've had so far. And Joel's been here a lot longer than me,
Yeah. Good. Excellent.
and
Thank you.
Jason for that matter. Now you go get your softball kid.
Okay, so I don't know what's going on with Sonny's. I've reached out. There's pipe laying on the ground. There's a machine there. I don't know. I've asked.
I wasn't gonna ask.
Sonny's.
it's,
They've decided just to do a food truck.
right, yeah, that's right.
Designation.
That was great.
I did see a Chick-fil-A food truck
They're just
at
gonna park
a
it on the
local
grass.
Shooters World I was at, so.
They're gonna park it on the grass.
There's 2 a.m. area. Sonny's barbecue.
So we are, we still have some more land development code items for you to review. We're gonna be looking at Airbnbs. I went in the variance we had, I asked the applicant, is this being looked at as an Airbnb? Because we want to get people that have Airbnbs in the process with us. We don't necessarily want to run them out. I want people to come to Ocoee. And, but we do have some instances where you have the big McMansions, those big 2-story square houses, 5 and 6 bedrooms that are Airbnbs, and every other day you could have 8, 10 people constantly shifting. So we're gonna come up, look for some criteria to make Airbnbs appropriately set. I would bet you there's some Airbnbs around here you don't even know that operate that way, and it's a good thing to have people come into Ocoee. And so we're gonna bring Airbnb, we're going to bring back tiny houses, or bring to you Airbnb and tiny house. I think that's it. Anything else between Airbnb and tiny house? Fences. We're gonna do another round with fences, like on the double frontage lots, moving it closer than 15 foot, looking at a 10-foot or 5-foot with a shrub, with a hedge on it. We're looking at some things for fences like that. And then we're gonna bring you comprehensive plan amendments. And that's gonna be fun, and it's going to require, it's gonna be all text. It's gonna be text and data analysis. So we will try to get to you in parts and early enough, try to get it to you on a Thursday if we can. And if we don't need a development review committee meeting, might be able to get it to you a little bit earlier than that. But looking forward to bringing that to you, as well as some other big projects that we have coming in. So I'm available for any questions.
The garages come out of permit yet for City Center?
City Center has submitted, so to date, the foundations for the parking garage are in place. We now are reviewing the rest of the foundation for the building that's gonna sit wrapped around it, sit on it. And then what we're told is another financing mechanism kicked in last week, and they're kicking off the rest of the design of that. But we do have the foundations for the buildings in. So that'll be another group of work on that.
Great.
That's-
Anybody else have any other questions?
On that garage, don't hire that crane company. It just collapsed today at Advent.
Yeah, I saw that.
Well, if that's the case, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.